The wind howled through the twisted trees of Black Hollow Forest, a name that had become folklore in the small town of Redbrook. People spoke in hushed voices about the disappearances, the eerie lights, the shadows that seemed to move on their own. Of course, it was all nonsense. At least, that's what Jason and his friends told themselves. There were 4 of them. Jason, the self-proclaimed leader of their amateur exploration channel. Mark, the camera guy with a knack for capturing the creepy stuff. Lisa, the skeptic who scoffed at ghost stories. And Danny, the anxious one who had a bad feeling about everything. They had come to document a night in Black Hollow for their channel, Haunted Trails. "We'll film everything," Jason instructed as they set up camp. "If there's anything spooky, we want it on camera." They built a small fire, its flickering light pushing against the overwhelming darkness. Beyond the fire's glow, the trees stretched on forever, their gnarled limbs like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The night felt unnaturally quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. Mark adjusted the night vision on his camera. "Man, this place is dead. I was hoping for at least an owl or something." Lisa smirked. "Maybe even a ghostly moan?" Danny shuddered. "Can we not joke about that?" Jason waved a dismissive hand. "Relax, Danny. There's no such thing as ghosts. It's just stories." But then, as if in response, something moved at the edge of the firelight. Mark swung his camera around. "Did you see that?" Jason squinted. The darkness seemed heavier there, denser. It wasn't just trees. It was something else. Shadows stood between the trees, tall and motionless. At first, Jason thought they were just tricks of the firelight, but then one of them shifted. "Holy shit," Lisa breathed. Are those people?" Danny gripped his flashlight and flicked it on, but the moment the beam touched the figures, they disappeared. Not faded, not ran, just ceased to exist. A heavy silence fell over them. The wind had stopped. The trees no longer swayed. The fire crackled, and in the distance something sighed. Jason tried to play it cool. "All right, well, that was weird. Mark, did you get that?" Mark checked the footage. His face went pale. "Yeah, but they were there before I saw them. They were already watching us." No one laughed this time. The night dragged on, each minute stretching unbearably long. Every so often, they caught glimpses of those shadowy figures standing just at the fire's edge, never moving, never stepping forward, just watching. Then, one of them screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It was a sound that tore through the night like jagged glass against bone. It was agony, fear, something primal and wrong. The group flinched, their hands flying to their ears. But the sound wasn't coming from one direction. It was everywhere. More screams joined the first, each one layered atop the other. A chorus of pain and torment. The shadows pulsed with the sound, twisting, writhing in place. Some of them seemed to stretch toward the fire, their shapes distorting like something alive and hungry. Danny snapped first. He grabbed his bag and bolted. "I'm not staying. Screw this." "Danny, wait," Lisa yelled. But he was already gone, swallowed by the dark. Jason, shaking, turned to Mark. "Turn off the camera." Mark hesitated, but turn it off. The moment the camera blinked off, the screaming stopped. The silence was deafening. No wind, no rustling, no distant sighs. The fire crackled softly, as if nothing had happened. Lisa's breath came in sharp bursts. What the hell was that? Jason swallowed hard. "We need to find Danny." They grabbed their flashlights and took hesitant steps into the darkness. The woods were impossibly still, as if holding its breath. Then Lisa gasped and pointed. Danny's flashlight lay on the ground, its beam pointed upward, illuminating a tall black figure standing right beside them. It was featureless, a void in the shape of a man. The edges of it shimmered like heat waves, and though it had no eyes, Jason felt it staring at him, through him. Then its mouth opened, stretching impossibly wide. The screaming began again. Lisa dropped her flashlight and ran. Mark followed, the camera swinging wildly in his grip. Jason turned and bolted, heart hammering against his ribs. He didn't stop until he saw the glow of town lights in the distance. They made it back. Danny didn't. The police searched for days, but no trace of him was ever found. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Just his flashlight lying in the dirt. Mark refused to edit the footage. He swore the shadows were still moving in the clips, that if he watched too long, they'd notice him. The channel shut down. Lisa moved away. Jason tried to forget, but sometimes, when he was alone at night, he'd hear a sound, just at the edge of hearing, a scream, and he knew, deep down, that the shadows were still watching, but it didn't end there. 1 year later, Jason found himself unable to sleep. The nightmares had gotten worse. Danny screaming, shadows pressing in, watching, waiting. He had convinced himself it was just trauma, guilt for running that night, until he saw the note. It was sitting on his kitchen table when he woke up. He lived alone. The note was written in a shaky hand, the letters jagged, uneven. I can still hear them. They found me. Help me. It was signed. Danny. Jason's blood ran cold. He checked the locks. Every window was shut. There was no sign of a break-in. Then his phone buzzed. A video file. No number. No contact. With shaking hands, he played it. The screen was dark at first, just faint static, like an old VHS tape. Then the picture cleared, and Jason felt his stomach drop. It was footage of their last night in Black Hollow. But there was something new. Just behind the fire, barely visible in the flickering glow, was Danny. His face twisted in an expression of pure terror. His mouth stretched wide, locked in a never-ending scream. And then, the shadows moved closer. The video cut to black. Jason's phone buzzed again. Another message. They're coming for you next. The forest was empty, just the way Owen liked it. He had hiked 3 miles off trail to set up camp near a small hidden lake. No people, no noise, just the sounds of nature and the quiet thrill of being completely alone. The sun had long since set, and the sky was an inky black, scattered with stars. His fire crackled, the orange glow licking at the surrounding darkness. It was peaceful, until he saw the other camper. Owen nearly dropped his tin of beans when he spotted the man sitting by a fire at the edge of the trees, maybe 50 yards away. He hadn't noticed anyone when he'd arrived. No sounds, no signs of life. Yet there he was. The man sat rigidly on a log, facing the flames, his back straight, hands resting on his knees. His face, barely visible in the firelight, was expressionless. Something about him felt wrong. Owen called out, "Hey there, didn't see you earlier." No response. The man didn't even flinch. Owen stood, brushing dirt from his pants. "Hey, everything okay?" Still nothing. Just the fire crackling and the distant hoot of an owl. Owen pulled out his phone and zoomed in, recording the scene. The camper's skin was pale, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones. His eyes were locked on the fire, unblinking. Owen shivered. Maybe he's in some kind of trance. Meditating? High as hell? He considered approaching, but decided against it. He wasn't about to get stabbed in the middle of the woods by some lunatic. Instead, he double-checked his bear spray and went back to his tent, occasionally glancing over. The camper never moved. Not once. Morning came, golden sunlight streaming through the trees. Owen unzipped his tent and stretched, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Then he froze. The camper was still there, exactly as he had been the night before. His posture, his expression, his hands, it was all identical. The fire had long since died, leaving only a ring of blackened logs. But the man hadn't moved an inch. Owen's stomach twisted. Maybe he had a stroke, or was dead. But even a corpse would have slumped over, wouldn't it? Cautiously, he grabbed his phone and replayed the footage from last night. He scrubbed through it, watching the flickering firelight dance over the camper's unmoving face. Then he slowed it down, scanning frame by frame. And that's when he noticed it. The man never blinked, not once. A cold wave of dread washed over Owen. He looked back at the motionless figure across the clearing. His chest wasn't rising. He wasn't breathing. Owen's heart hammered. This was wrong. Completely wrong. He packed his gear in a frenzy, stuffing his sleeping bag and supplies into his backpack. He didn't care about breakfast. He just wanted to get the hell away from this place. A branch snapped. Owen whipped around. The camper was standing, not rising, not shifting, just standing, like a puppet whose strings had been yanked taut. His face remained blank, his limbs unnaturally stiff. Owen couldn't breathe. He stepped back. The man stepped forward. Nope, 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 Owen muttered, slinging his pack over his shoulders. He turned and sprinted into the woods, branches whipping against his arms and face. He didn't care. He just ran. He didn't stop until he reached his car. Slamming the door shut, he fumbled with his keys, breathing hard. He forced himself to look back down the trail. Empty, no sign of the camper, no movement, just the trees swaying in the morning breeze. With shaking hands, Owen started the engine and tore down the dirt road. He didn't stop until he was miles away, back in town. He checked into the first motel he found, locking the door behind him. Only then did he finally let himself breathe. That night, he forced himself to review the footage again. Most of it was the same, just the still figure by the fire. But as he scrubbed through the final moments, he saw something new. In the last few seconds of the recording, just before he stopped filming, the camper's head snapped toward the camera. Not turned, snapped. And in that single frozen frame, Owen saw its mouth stretched into an impossibly wide grin. The video ended. And then, his phone buzzed with a notification. Unknown sender. You shouldn't have looked back.